everybody, and welcome to Happy Hour with Maestro Tim. I am Maestro Tim, and today I have a very special guest. He has the very soil of Iowa coursing through his veins. He's an Olympic gold medalist, legendary coach, and recent recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Dan Gable, welcome.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Hey, thank you so much for saying yes. I was telling you offline that I'm super prepared. I got my Dan Gable book here. Got my Dan Gable beer here. I got the Dan Gable right here. And Ed, can you put it on the big screen? And to go with my Gable beer, I've got an Orchestra Iowa coaster. Now this is something that New Beau has been making from all that wood from the derecho. And you can support Orchestra Iowa by buying 4 of these for $20. And you can touch on the link that's on our website right now. So, pretty cool. So, listen, cheers to you, sir. I want to, this is one of my all-time favorite sounds. This is the song of my people, right here. Amen. Oh, geez. So, I got to tell you, I thought I was pretty cool having my own theme song, but you have your own beer. So, I feel like my staff is letting me down. So, Ed, can you start brewing for me? And Darren, start writing me a book, okay? No haikus. I want war and peace, okay?
Got it.
In iambic pentameter. By the end of the day, okay? Right. Use spell check. You got to be firm with these people. All right. So, Dan, I wanted to talk to you about leadership, and there are many surprising parallels between what you do and what we do also in the arts. But before we do that, I want to talk about the obvious. You've recently been awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Iowa is extraordinarily proud of you, sir. Tell us about how you were notified, because I have images of maybe a black helicopter like descending on your lawn and a G-man delivering the letter on a pillow or something. How were you notified and how did you react?
I was actually in my car coming back. I got a little fishing cabin up in northeast Iowa, in Lansing, Iowa. And anyway, I was coming back and I hadn't really checked my phone I go up there, I have the phone and I do work, but I might have went out doing a little fishing or boat riding or something. And so I finally checked it and it said, give me a call. It was one of my son-in-laws, Danny Olsta, former football player for the Hawkeyes back a few years ago. And he just said, have you looked at your phone recently? And I go, no. And he goes, look and see if there's a couple calls on there from Washington, D.C. And I said, well, I'm driving right now, so I really, I'm not going to do that. But so anyway, so I waited till I got home, and I knew he was up to something. So I looked, and there was a call, and so I actually called it, and it was an assistant to the president. And I said, oh boy, So anyway, they told me that I had been picked to win this award, and I knew some people were working on it for about a year, I believe, but to get an award like that, you don't just sit there and wait around for it, because that's not how you get an award like that. I keep doing what I normally do, so I just finally I get another call from my son-in-law, and he said, any word? And I said, well, they called me. And he goes, the president called you? I go, no. I guess he tried to reach me, but I couldn't reach me. But his assistant told me about it, and that's great. I really appreciate it. And of course, I knew it was a big deal, but I didn't know how big a deal.
Of course.
I kind of go on with my work and I want to accumulate my work, sport of wrestling, family, that type of stuff. And, whatever is happened to be there, it's there. So I looked it up, and I didn't realize it was like the highest civilian award you can get. I
It's
did not know that.
it's a
I
big
should have.
deal. Yeah.
I know, and all of it. So it really hadn't gotten out yet. So she told me that you can be around in the morning because I'll have the president call you. And I said, yeah, I'll be around. I'll take the president's call. So, so, so anyway, he got a hold of me, and he also put this congressman in from Ohio on the phone named Jim Jordan. And Jim Jordan is a former national champion wrestler for the University of Wisconsin. He's from Ohio, but he wrestled there. And I think he beat, one of my kids probably in the national finals. I know he beat the great John Smith one time in the nationals. And so, it's, and I knew his position. So they were on there, but it was like a comical phone call for 10 minutes. I mean, the president was going, now, Jim, I thought you were the best wrestler because you're the best wrestler I've ever been around, Jim Jordan. I mean, everybody tells me how good you were. You mean to tell me this guy's better than you were? And Jim Jordan, and Jordan goes, I'm not even close, So, and so then, it was kind of funny back and forth for a while. But I had, the president has a little wrestling background, but no award winners in this category are wrestlers.
Sure.
And so I'm the first award winner to win that Medal of Freedom. And so, somebody's got to start it, because now once you get somebody in that category, other people are going to be wanting to win that award, because it's not like an award you go and you wrestle for it, but actually you have wrestled for it, but not to win that medal. All the other medals I got, most of them you had to actually step on the mat to win a championship. But this championship, which is, like today, I got a text today, or I got a phone call, I listened to it, and it said, hey, this goes right there with your Olympic gold, these are the ones. So that means quite a bit, I guess.
Well,
so I'm pretty happy.
I know it means a lot to all of Iowa. I think we're celebrating this with you. Congratulations. That is a huge deal. And I'm really honored to be here to get a chance to speak with you. So I was reading on your biography, and as you were developing it as an athlete, one thing that really jumped out on me was fire in the belly. Your sort of drive and commitment and discipline. And I know you demanded that from your athletes as a coach. So let me start off by asking you, that sort of necessary drive, is that nature or nurture? Or is it a combination of the two?
I believe with me, it started with a lot of environment. Mm-hmm. A lot of environment. And by that I mean born into a community that was really wrestling oriented. Waterloo, Iowa. I mean, they were winning East Waterloo, West Waterloo, Cedar Falls High. Columbus had some great wrestlers. Those are the high schools. But Waterloo East and Waterloo West were dominating the state at that particular time. And there was a coach named Bob Siddons, who just died here in the last year and a half in '94, who really kind of was at the top of the list of all the coaches in the state until just recently. And one of the coaches that took over that top position, I happened to coach at the University of Iowa, Brad Smith from Lisbon, Iowa. So, I have all these connections, but it goes from my family to my coaches to the YMCA in town when I was a kid. It's like, it goes to the fact that all of a sudden when I'm 4 years old, I turned on my first TV set. Yeah, I was already on my way when I was 4, just because, I was an athletic kid from a standpoint of that's what I really liked. But all of a sudden, the television came into the home when I was 4. And all of a sudden, instead of listening to the radio, it went from ears to sight. And all of a sudden now I started watching people that I was listening to, and I was actually getting a lot more out of it from a standpoint of like the New York Yankees in baseball and the heroes then like Mantle, Maris, these guys that were great athletes, and you would listen to them. So that jumped to the football season, and it was Jim Brown, and it jumped to the basketball season. It was Bob Cousy. These guys are phenomenal basketball players, and so I got to vision it, and so now it was like double whammy for me, and the atmosphere of the parents, the right coaches, the YMCA, that type of stuff, just the television just inspired me a whole lot. And then my dad's had friends that had sons that were really good wrestlers on the high school team, on the East Waterloo team. And they would pick me up, take me when I was a kid, watch them wrestle, roll around, just the little things like that. So I had a really good start at the beginning of my life. And it kind of continued because all of a sudden I started being good. Then the good coaches picked me up along the way. Right. So I continued to be good. But it all didn't just happen because of just this kid born with this.
Right. Well, because actually, let me press you on an early start, because I have a lot of times I talk to parents who come to me saying that they have a talented kid who's interested in music, and if you're really serious about being a performer, I mean, you need to be studying by the time you're 4 years old, 5 years old, and if you're not practicing 2 or 3 hours a day by the time you're 13, it's not going to happen. Did you ever have a conversation like that, or did that actually sort of come naturally as you were getting more and more interested and engaged in the sport?
I never had a conversation like that because I was also competing in swimming, baseball, football, and I did that until I stopped swimming at 7th grade because I competed probably from like 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. But then that was at the same time as wrestling in junior high. So I would wrestle in junior high, but I also played football. And in the off season, I played a little YMCA basketball, and then I also played baseball. So, but 10th grade was when you started high school for me. So I went to the first football practice, and I was a small kid. In fact, I ended up wrestling the smallest weight class that year. And the head wrestling coach was also an assistant football coach. And so when I walked in there, he saw me and he knew I was going to be a pretty good wrestler. But he saw me and the size of these other people. I was probably the smallest guy there. And he pulled me aside and he told me, he says, I'd love to see you play football, but I'm the head wrestling coach. And I really need you. I really need you for this lightest weight spot. And you're a good wrestler, and I don't want you to get hurt. So would you consider just showing up for football every day to do the warm-ups and not play football and just go in and practice? We have an open mat. And there's a few guys that aren't out for football that are going to be on that open mat. And that would be an option if you would want to do that. And I kind of went along with his decision, tried it, and it worked out really well. And that's when I actually stopped being a multi-athlete, once I was 15 years old. And I think I had a lot of that experience with other sports that really helped me, and I wasn't burned out at all or anything like that, and I wasn't pushed to the point that it was going to burn me out. So I had some pretty good breaks there, but there is one thing that made a big, huge difference. But I'd already proved myself a little bit, and that's the fact that I was a state champion wrestler. And about 2 weeks after I won the state championship as a sophomore, I was walking to school and was with a neighborhood kid that I haven't really been associated with. And he walked in, he said, "Hey, Gable, I see where you won the state championships. Congratulations." he goes, hey, and he said something negative about my sister. I had a sister that was 4 years older, and Diane, and and he was actually in my grade, but he was a little older. But I didn't really respond to that because I thought it was just. I almost did. I almost went home and said something to my parents, but instead of saying something, I just kept it inside me, and it was the wrong thing to do. You talk about leadership. The communication is a huge thing, and 2 weeks later, he killed her.
Yeah,
killed my sister.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, and I maybe could have prevented that, but instead of harping on that my whole life, kind of dedicated your whole life to doing good things. And it wasn't as much for me as it was for my mom and dad, because they were raising a pretty good kid,
right,
and kids. And all of a sudden, when this tragedy happened, they really didn't know how to handle it. They really didn't. And it was something that, because they had done a good job with me, because they had put me in the right positions, I was able to step in and kind of straighten them out a little bit. I mean, I don't think it ever went away by any means at all, but it certainly helped me in my down the road excellence, and it kept my mom and dad together. That was the key for me.
Well, that's a perfect segue, because as a coach, you have to, how do you coach through loss? Either actually, let's just start with just a loss in terms of a match, and then I'm going to go someplace larger than this. But when you're coaching somebody and they lose that match, how do you get their confidence back? Because excellence, there's also confidence as part of performance.
You have to have confidence. And when you lose confidence, you don't perform. It kind of depends. If it's a loss and it was like a slip on a wet spot on the mat, if it was simply that you have a lot more in you and you held back, that's all a part of it. But if you start heading in that direction because of that loss, and you're stuck and you're not going to come out of it, then you have to find a way. Now, in a wrestling, if I get to a point where I feel like this kid's going the wrong direction and I'm having a tough time getting him back on track, I find another path for him to have success. And by that I mean, we had the ability to pull him out of the lineup, put him in another so-called tournament or another uniform, same school, but he might go to a different route. So I would do a lot of homework, find a route where he could go and have success, or at least you would think he could have success.
Right.
And for me, it was almost like if he's really gone, I would almost have to have him win 7 times in a row to get him going again. So our schedule wasn't going to do that. So I'd have to pull him and send him to different routes. Now that's one way. That's the most difficult one. And then once he gets used to that again, I could get him back usually. But usually you don't have that kind of devastation. Usually have a loss that was like, maybe he turned and looked at the clock and the guy took you down, or a bad call by the referee. And so you could get it back, but you had to be careful to not head that pattern. You had to shut it off. And I've had kids that were 158, 67 pounders. And so I would say, okay, I can't find this guy's not heading in the right direction. He's had 2 or 3 losses. And so I'd bring him down to the lower weight classes and try to have him wrestle somebody in a lower weight class, and he still couldn't win. So, finally you'd have to go to the lowest way possible. Yeah, you know, just have to find a route, and that's the imagination, and that's experience, and that's something that you should do as a coach or as a leader or as a father. You know, anybody that, you know, if you want success and you're on the wrong path, you got to find a way. And you know what? You go for help. And so sometimes I wasn't getting it done. So guess who I went to? I went to his high school coach when I was in college. And then that wasn't enough. So guess who I went to? His mom and dad. And so if I could find some commonalities between the people I talked to, like his high school coach and his mom and dad, I would run with that number, that area. And because sometimes people don't tell the truth.
Right.
And so usually when I found something that was going, I had two people who would tell me the same thing, I would go that way. And it's happened many times with my kids.
Tell us the story about an athlete that you coached, and forgive me if I get his name wrong, but Lincoln McIlravy?
McIlravy.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking about when I read about him. Tell us about that guy, because you really worked on him in terms of confidence.
Well, I didn't realize that he had any kind of nervous issues, because he was wrestling with what we call unattached, and in all these outside tournaments, but they were even good tournaments, and he was right up there. He was a freshman, and we were redshirting, we're holding him out, and until all of a sudden the team looked like we needed him. We could make some adjustments, put him in, make us stronger. But I didn't really have him in the best of matches to determine how he handled those matches. And it was actually the simplest match I could find him, that I brought him out of red shirt to put him in. So I thought it was going to be an easy win. I didn't. And that's where I learned about his nerves. And his nerves was in Carver Hawkeye in front of 10,000 people. It's just a high, you know, for kids. It can be. And all of a sudden, when he got in there and he hadn't wrestled a match yet with an Iowa uniform, even though he was 21-2 unattached with his own uniform on, you know, it was all of a sudden he hit a wall, and I didn't realize that was the case. So, you know, it looked like a disaster for a coach, because he got almost majored, and that means got beat bad. Mm-hmm. And why would you pull him out? It was late in the season, so it didn't look too good. And his dad didn't go along with it in the first place. So I had to trick his dad. I had to figure it out, because it was over. I mean, he had to wrestle for us now, or he wrestled one match and he lost the whole year eligibility. So I told his dad, I kind of confronted his dad before the dad confronted me, and I told him that we got to work together. I snuck behind him because he was looking for me, and I snuck behind him when he turned around. I go, Mr. McIlravy, we got to work together, because this thing doesn't look so good. And so I need your help. I need a lot of your help. Are you going to help me? And because I know he was ready to call me every name in the book. You know, and so basically through his conversation, we designed a plan to get him some more matches in Carver Hawkeye Arena. And our program was built good enough to where I went, when the newspaper people came in and I gave them the plan that I had for Lincoln, that they helped me, because the plan was they needed to get the word out to the fans locally that we were having some tryout matches for Lincoln in the Carver Hawkeye Arena, and I needed some fans to show up so it could be realistic. And guess what? 2,000 to 3,000 fans showed up to watch him have these tryouts. And what's amazing is he got in a whole lot of matches in 2 or 3 days, and because we wrestled probably 2 a day for 2 or 3 days, and he won every one of them. What's unbelievable more is that the coach was crazy enough, this guy, that he couldn't lose. I had it set up. But you know what? Nobody does that. But you know why nobody does that? Because nobody's going to forfeit and go out and not want to show. So the other team members wanted to show how tough they were. But you know what? They were team members. They were all aboard on it when I talked to them about it. But they didn't have to really show much because Lincoln did wrestle really well. And afterwards, I asked the guys, I said, did you have to let up at all or anything? He goes, no, he beat me. He beat me. I didn't have to. Now, when you send a kid out to lose, though, do you really know that they're doing their best? I don't know about that. So Lincoln actually had a setup deal, and he went through 5 or 6 matches, got that experience in Carver Hawkeye Arena. The next match, he had a really tough match, went in overtime, and not in practice, in a real match, and won. And then he went to the Big Tens. He only got 3rd, which is not bad. But then he went to the national tournament, and he won the national tournament. He won the national tournament as a freshman. He only had about 1 month of actual uniform on, and he did pretty well ever since. He ended up with a silver medal in the Worlds, bronze medal in the Olympics. Great guy.
In my business, we call that a dress rehearsal. But I want to expand it into a larger issue. I have a lot of really talented musicians who perform with me, for me. And they've got the drive, they've got the talent, they've got everything going for them. And if life circumstances were any different, they could easily be playing in the majors. But there's sometimes when you love the art and the art does not love you back. How do you coach somebody through the pain of disappointment and bitterness for doing everything that's possible to achieve their dreams in the sport, and yet it still doesn't happen?
Well, it happens.
Yeah.
Because going into it, you have to have the confidence that in reality it's going to happen. Because if there's any doubts along the way, well, there's going to be doubts along the way, but you have to eliminate those doubts. And the other thing is you have to kind of take the pressure off where, if it doesn't end up that way, it's not a disaster.
Yeah.
This is the best way. You got to have a lot of this. The people that you're working with have to have a lot of faith in you, and you have to have that built already. Takes a while. That's why it takes a while for a coach to be built or a leader to be built. He's got to have a lot of proven track records that people believe in you. So it's there's toughness, and then there's science. So basically, art. What you're talking about, science, the art. I believe, and I can get kids. Well, I have both kids, but most of my kids were tough that came in because that's what we started with. But then we had to teach them a lot about wrestling. And then when they put them both together, it really helped. But even me, I went 7 years without a loss, but when I lost, I had to figure out why I lost. Well, I lost because I didn't put the same effort into preparation for that match. But more than that was just that match. But more of it is I did have a long ways to go yet. In reality, I was really good, they thought, but there was just another step that was maybe just in my. I'll give you an example: lowering my stance on my feet in wrestling by 2 or 3 inches, and it was going to be hard to do that after wrestling for 15 years, and now you only got 2 years of world championship and Olympic games. But because I had that loss, that drove me to now go to lower my stance. But I just didn't do it the first day. I did it every day, every second. And all of a sudden, within 6 weeks, 8 weeks, it became normal to me. And I should have done it a long time. It's the science, it's the art. But it's something that took me from the championship level and realized you have to be prepared mentally and tough every time. But because when you're not, you could be vulnerable. But what else is there? That's improvement in the actual sport, the not only strategy but the technique, the tactics, and those are those are all there. So any business, in your business, I mean, you can watch somebody that's tremendous and great. They can find a way to get better.
Yep.
They can find a way.
Yep.
Because you got to break down the whole thing. And are you doing it perfect on every note, on every sound? Am I doing it perfect on every move? No. There's infinite number of moves. There's an infinite number of sounds, I'm sure. So, you can always get better.
It's. I'm going to check the chat room because there's a whole lot of people who are following along, and I'm sure they have a whole lot better questions than I do, and I'll get into that shortly. But my anecdote to that is I was with the Kansas City Symphony, and I was conducting a concert with Doc Severinsen, and that particular weekend he had pulled a back muscle or something, so he was taking muscle relaxants, and his mouth was dry. And so in concert, we're playing this piece for trumpeters out there. It's called The Carnival of Venice. Hard as hell. And we play this piece, and it's awful. I mean, it's absolutely terrible. He knows it. I know it. Everybody in the audience knows it. And we get through it, but this is why I admired him so much, because after that, he stopped the concert, and he said, sometimes you just got to get back on the horse. And we did it again. And it was much better the second time through. But the fact that he did not want that memory of a loss dogging him, and right in concert, he did it again. I can't tell you how much I admire an artist to be able to do that.
Whoa.
Yeah. Let me get into the chat room and see what's going on. Let's see here.
I wish I could have done that on my loss.
Let's see. Well, Barbara Taylor, welcome. This is so exciting. Bailey. Bailey Miller wants to know, Dan, and I'm afraid to ask this, do you have any musical experience? Also, Go Hawks.
I definitely do.
I see there's a piano in the background, so you have a little bit of credit on whatever you're about to say.
Well, that's everybody has a piano, because when you have grandkids and you have all these parents coming over, somebody's going to know how to play the piano, and somebody's going to sing, and we're going to have some good old times, whether it be Christmas music or whatever. But no, when I was in grade school, I played the cornet, or how do you spell that?
Yep, cornet, yep.
Yeah, there was the cornet and the trumpet, but They said I needed to start with the cornet, or what it was. I played for 1 year. But it was more, I think, coming from my parents. It was more like, you got to do this. You got to be well balanced. You're such a nut with athletics. You got to do this. And I did it. And, I didn't mind it.
Right.
But after I did it for a year, I asked my mom and dad if I could now go back full time.
Yep.
To go watching Mickey Mantle and I've got kind
Sure.
of guys. And they said, good, but you at least had an experience that we wanted you to have. So, again, got some help. Never regretted it, because it was something that was different, for me. But I never really did it long enough to get really good at it. So I probably,
sure,
I didn't like my music maybe.
Well, but you brought up mental toughness, and you even brought up your loss. And here's what I find so interesting. I mean, the difference between good and great is how you handle that loss, and the mental toughness to use it to make yourself better. And I love the quote that you say that, your record was 181-1, and then you got good. So tell us about Larry Owens beating you and why that made you a better wrestler.
Well, you just don't win 181 and you have one to go and lose it. You just don't do that.
Right.
Right. You can lose at the beginning or you can lose at the middle, but if you win 181, that's 7 years without a loss. So, but was I ready to maybe win the Olympics or dominate the Olympics or win the world championships or dominate the world championships? Probably not. And so it's like, how did this loss sneak in there? Well, I think the loss snuck in there because somebody was looking out for me or whatever, because it was the only time that I really made some adjustments, like serious adjustments. I went back 365. I always keep a little calendar that I have every day what I do, and it's helped me with my taxes a couple times too. So just because I couldn't, you can't remember, and so you go back and okay.
Yeah.
So I went back 365 days from that loss, and there was definitely things that took place that year, during the whole year, that why did I leave this out? Why didn't I do this? I normally went to a summer camp, and instead I just worked at a hard job. And I was still wrestling, but the summer camp was always one where you went to with experts and you learned a little bit more. But I skipped that summer camp the year before for that loss. That's one thing. But then going to so then I also think I had some thoughts in my mind. How can I really get ready for this guy? No, I didn't think about this guy. How could I really get ready for the championships this year? Because I've already beaten everybody and stuff like this. Well, why don't I go up a weight class and challenge the guy that was heavier than me in a match, a dual meet, about a month before the national tournament? Well, I put a lot of emphasis on that. Too much. It was almost like when that match was over, I was kind of done with the season, because I had been emphasizing that for 6 months, where the emphasis is the national tournament. Saturday night, you got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the national tournament. Saturday nighters, that's that's where you put your peaking. And I had my peak in the wrong place. So I peaked in the wrong place that year. Now, when I got to the tournament, everybody was always wanting to hound me. And guess what? My coaches thought I could win through anything, just because I had dominated so much. And they just basically let me go and talk to all the interviews. It was kind of like for the sport. Well, if you really want somebody to perform up to their best, you let them talk, but after your competition's through. And I was talking after every round. And finally, what the really thing that hurt me was he got inside my head, because he had been training for me, but I didn't know that. And when he got there, the headline in the paper was, "I'm here to beat Dan Gable." And I didn't, he was in my weight class the year before, and I'd beaten him a few years before that, but I didn't really pay attention. But when he said that, it caught my attention. So when I was wrestling during my matches, he was on at the same time on another mat. I would watch him as I'm wrestling my guy. And so all of a sudden, when it's time to do the finals, I'm doing an interview with ABC Wide World of Sport, and I'm on my 12th take of a line that I should be able to say, "Hi, I'm Dan Gable. Come watch me as I finish my career 182-0. Well, you don't do that, But everybody, my coaches, everybody thought, I could do it. So go ahead and help the sport and do it. But no, you can't. You cannot do that if you really want to make sure that you're at your best. So when I got into this match, I wasn't going through my normal routine. I got tired in the match. I never knew if I got tired before. I always got tired after the match. As soon as the whistle blew and I raised my hand, I didn't know I was tired, because I was focused on my 4-minute trumpet thing, or whatever, on my music. I'm just trying to give it to you.
Yeah.
But instead,
I get it.
when the whistle blew and I got into a tussle right away on the edge of the mat, all of a sudden, I remember saying, "Wow, I'm tired." And this is 30 seconds. I had to talk myself through that whole match.
So time out here. So you have an internal dialogue when you're wrestling, because this is the one thing that's hard for musicians, because if there's an internal dialogue going in while you're trying to execute, things aren't going well.
Only once. That was that match.
Yeah.
And I found that out. You cannot be knowing and thinking what you're supposed to do next. You just react. Actually, you're proactive. And that's how it works. So that's what happened. And so I learned a lot. But what I learned a lot about was my future, not just for the next 2 years, but my coaching future. By going back and analyzing all this match and all the things that led up to it and all the things that I did afterward, helped make me a lot better coach, make me understand. And that's really key.
So right on that with being a coach, you're dealing with athletes and individuals, and a lot of their preparation is individuals, but you also have to build a team. Tell us a little bit about the chemistry and what you were looking at when you were recruiting, or whether you were just putting together a team for a tournament. How important is chemistry within the group, as well as their what they bring to it individually?
I'll just give you an example. And I was always the captain of the team, and I was always had good coaches. But when I got hired at Iowa, I was an assistant, and I learned from a good coach a lot about what this chemistry is all about. And the chemistry to me is me talking to the team on an idea that I have to make the team better, but they buy into it and they go along with it, and then it's okay. Whereas a lot of coaches or a lot of people will make changes and do things and not involve their players. And so sometimes you have a mad bunch of people, or a disgruntled, or people that even go beyond the team back to the parents or whatever. So an example which is never supposed to be done in athletics is, I don't want you to come to practice for the first hour of practice. I said this to an individual. I didn't say it to him. I was talking to the team, because the guy, the kid, I didn't have him come to practice because I wanted to talk to the team about him. And so when I talked to the team, they actually, after they heard what I wanted to do, they agreed with me that he shouldn't come for the first hour, that he should only come for the second hour. Not every day, but on the days that we were actually doing instruction, because he had proven that he couldn't handle that type of practices. Mm-hmm. And so we could hold him out and bring him in, and then he'd be fine. But usually with a team, if you just do that, they're going to be mad as heck, because it's hard to go through a wrestling practice.
Sure.
And so they're going to think that I'm showing favoritism, or I'm going to let this guy get off of something. But when I talked to them about it, and they actually ended up thinking about it and agreeing that would be best, no problem. Mm-hmm. And it worked. A couple days a week, he came in at practice started at 3:30. He'd come in at 4:30 and go till 5:45. And he missed the first hour. But it was all warm-ups and instruction, slow pace. He was only high-paced. He didn't have the ability to sit there and listen. If he sat there and listened, he'd fall asleep.
Yeah, lose the intensity.
So, it's a team effort.
Sure.
But you got to have a lot of talk back and forth.
So I got a loaded question for you, and feel free to say, no, give me a pass on this one. But here's my pitch to you. I think there's a lot of organizations that say they are excellent, but often aren't excellent. And sometimes that's because they have internal policies or that actually get in the way of positive results. During your career, did you ever have any institutional obstacles that got in between you and a championship program?
I don't think I have. But let me tell you why. Because I always backed it up.
Yeah.
I never had a reason, hardly. I always had the proof, like, there it is. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't have that proof, I could see that. But because I had the proof, but then again, it's not perfect, because now I already thought of something. But again, that was me being a little focused only on wins and losses. Okay, so we got all these wins and very few losses. And so why are you coming to me and complaining? And you know what? I found out he had the right to do that. And the reason why is because I had lost a little bit of control, or a lot of control, I don't
Yep.
know,
Yep.
of my team, and we were doing too much celebrating.
Got it. Yep.
And he was right. He was right. I needed more discipline involved off the mat, and I was not stepping in and watching that. And so that really helped me too, because sometimes even when you have that proof and you don't back it up with good things, you go in the wrong direction. And there's still, you can do a lot of good things. And if you actually do bad things somewhere else, then that's not the way it goes. When you do a lot of good things, you should expect there'll be a lot more good things going on. And that's the bottom line.
It's a virtuous spiral up. Listen, I'm going to check our chat room, and then I've got a question out of left field for you. Let's see what's going on in the chat room here. Denny Redmond is saying, your parents seemed very wise. You know, I think the older you get, the smarter your parents became. You know, I think a lot of people are just soaking this up. They're just soaking this up, listening to it. So no major questions. So as we come up to the hour, you may be retired, but you're also still plugged into the sport. And I'm going to talk about the 25th.
I'm not retired.
Well, that's right.
Come on.
I'm going to talk
I work
about
at the sport every day.
I'm going to be talking about the importance of advocacy, but I also noticed that in September 12th of this year, an Iranian wrestler named Naveed Afkari was executed. Did you know him? Did you ever see him compete?
No, I did not. But the two countries in the world that wrestling is their top sport. One of them is Iran.
Yeah.
It goes back a long time. In my 72 Olympics, the wrestler from Iran was a 5-time or 6-time world and Olympic champion. And I was in the World Championships the year before and those Olympics. And it was the first time he didn't win was the year before. But he was coming back for the Olympics. He won his first match, 17-1, but he pulled out of the tournament. And when he pulled out of the tournament, he was the leader of their program, and some of the other kids pulled out, a couple of them. And it really offended the people back home, not the fans as much as the government. And he never went back home.
Yeah.
He moved to the United States. But we're talking some governments that are a little different. And we're talking Russia, we're talking Iran. It's you can't just go against them.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah.
And that's what, apparently there was something that was loaded. So I was in Sports Illustrated several times, in the United States. Never made the cover, but I was in, had some good articles and special articles. But in Iran, I made the cover of their Sports Illustrated magazine.
It is the sport there. I mean, it's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and in Russia, the head of all Russia, Putin, well, the Russians actually, in my day, the head of all wrestling in Russia, it was called the USSR, but vowed to beat me at the Olympic Games. They vowed. They were because they didn't like me going through their country whipping them. And so they vowed to find a guy. They didn't do it, but they vowed it. And the thing about that, I had already been warned by Larry Owings, who beat me, who kept it a secret, which if Larry Owings would have shot his mouth off 3 months before the national tournament, I would have started focusing more probably on this national tournament. But he kept it quiet. But the Russians shot their mouth off like 3 months before the tournament. So that actually put me on a higher plateau to train better and smarter and to be ready. So that was good, which taught me a lesson as a coach. If I'm going to try to beat somebody, I can't go out there and just blast it all over, because I'm also motivating that person on the other end.
Good competition makes you better.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
right.
as we come up to the end of the hour, let's end with, as a leader, the importance of advocacy. Because I wake up every day, thinking about how I can make the orchestra more relevant into people's lives, why it's important for this community, why what we do is important. And you've done that with wrestling, and back in 2013, when the Olympic Committee was actually thinking of dropping wrestling, it's only one of the original sports of ancient Greece. What was, how did you react to that? Were you insulted by that? And did you realize that it was now your time in terms of leadership to step up to the plate and share to the world and to your constituencies why what you do is important?
I first evaluated our leadership in our sport at the highest level. And when you have somebody at that highest level that doesn't eat, drink, and sleep it, and they're there for the position only, then you're going to have some problems. You're going to have some issues. So that was one of the things, the change of leadership. And they said we can't change leadership because once they're in, they're in. Well, not when they're going to take your sport away. Right. So we found out there was a way to change leadership. So that really was of value. But wrestling, it's one-on-one, but yet there's a team. So there's both values. But wrestling, and now we have girls. We had to really work hard on that girls aspect. But wrestling is independence. It's independent because you're not out there with anybody. You're just playing against an opponent, and you're not playing. It's a battle. It's a battle. So you have that independence, but you also have the ability to have some self-defense, and everybody needs that. Now today is probably easier to get beat in self-defense because they probably pull out a gun or a knife or something as compared to the old days. But there's still a lot of hand-on-hand self-defense. I mean, that's just the bottom line. So everybody needs a little bit of that just for your own safety walking down the street. It's just you need that. But, it's self-confidence that you can get as well. It's an extremely difficult sport to even go out and participate in. It's like if you have the toughest musical piece and it's 6 minutes straight and you got to blow out and play that, and you got to use every inch of your diaphragm and body and wind. When you're done with that, if you ever noticed, which I know you noticed, that when they're done sometimes, the musicians just sweating like they went through a 6-minute wrestling match. That means they're working extremely hard. That means their heart rate is going. And that's what wrestling does, but that's what sometimes it does in any type of participation in a activity that is you put your heart and soul into it.
Anything that matters, it better get your blood pressure up.
Yeah.
I totally
heart
agree.
rate anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Dan, it's been an honor to be able to spend this time with you. Thank you for saying yes. Thanks to Cam Campbell for allowing me to get to you. He's my next door neighbor and a friend of yours. I
thought he was a friend of mine. I called him today.
It's over now, is it?
Well, I called him and he didn't call me back. I gave him all day because I wanted to get a few pointers on you.
He would. I've already paid him extra not to dish the dirt on you of all people. Right. But you and I actually met very briefly in Florida, and one thing that I remember, we just talked briefly, but I also noticed how much you practice what you preach, because when you're just standing in just casually, you are in a power stance. I mean, your feet are already planted 3 feet apart from. I mean, there is no way someone's going to sucker you and bowl you over. But anyway, I just wanted to say it's been an absolute honor and a thrill. I know that I speak for Iowa that we are so proud of you and your achievement with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Good God. I hope in a couple months or a couple years we can do this again, because there are still so much that we can talk about this fountain we call leadership, and you are a great example of that. So before you go here, I'm supposed to make a little bit of a commercial here. So everybody who's watching us, if you like this episode, Venmo us a few dollars, because we and the nonprofits could use all the help we can get. And next week is Ann Carter, who was a board member, a musician, and also a pioneer in corporate America in developing programs of equality, diversity, and inclusion, as well as Bill Jones, who's the director of the orchestral studies at the University of Iowa. Should be a great conversation. We're going to be talking about how noticeably my particular profession seems to be pretty monochromatic, and what we can do about, and what can we do about that. So join us next week. And again, Dan, thank you so much. God bless you, sir. And I'm going to finish my beer in your honor. So cheers to that.
I might have to have one.
Okay. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.